What if I told you that one of the universe's greatest secrets is hidden not in the depths of telescopes, but right under your couch? That insignificant speck of dust you sweep away in daily life is actually a silent witness connecting you to exploding stars, ancient civilizations, and billion-year-old cosmic journeys. You sweep, you sneeze, and you think of it as nothing more than annoying dirt. Yet microscopic dust has played an astonishing role in everything from human history to groundbreaking scientific discoveries. This humble household nuisance is actually an ancient traveler, a cosmic relic that has crossed interstellar voids to land on your windowsill. As we discover how dust, with such a tiny body, can carry the universe's biggest stories, you will never look at a single speck in your home the same way again. This is a story that begins inside giant stars, millions of degrees hot, and far beyond the reach of human hands. A speck of dust that seems ordinary to us is actually a silent memory of elements once forged in the heart of a star. Behind this immense journey, extending beyond hydrogen and helium to heavy elements like carbon, oxygen, silicon, and iron, lies a single power: supernova explosions. When a star dies, it hurls its elements into the universe. This cosmic fallout is the molecular ancestor of the dust you wipe off a coffee table with your finger billions of years later. This stardust wandering the depths of the universe is not just a chemical residue. It is also the carrier of the fundamental building blocks that make life possible in the universe. In the process leading up to the birth of our solar system, these dust grains clung to each other, collided, and became growing masses. The planet we live on today, all the minerals around us, and even our own bodies were formed by this stardust coming together in different forms. Therefore, the dust accumulating in the corner of your home is actually a miniature archive bearing silent witness to one of the universe's oldest stories. When the sun was still a young star, it was surrounded by a vast disk of gas and dust. Through chain reactions started by even a single particle, this disk turned into a planetary nursery over time. In this process called coagulation, microscopic dust specks combined through electrostatic attraction. As they formed larger particles, this gravitational force increased. Growth accelerated, and eventually, they became planetary seeds. Planetary science shows that these seeds grew by colliding, melting, and re-solidifying over millions of years to form the planets we know. The most important detail of this formation is that it was incredibly chaotic, an evolutionary process, but on a cosmic scale. Today, Earth's rocky surface is the result of dramatic events, like the giant impact that led to the formation of the Moon. But at the center of all this turbulence, the same humble player remains: dust. Interstellar dust determines the chemical composition of planets. It shapes planetary atmospheres, surface minerals, and even future biological potentials. In short, what made Earth Earth was these microscopic grains once drifting in the void. Our planet's surface is a much more cosmic place than we think. Every day, without us even realizing it, approximately 40,000 tons of space dust enter Earth's atmosphere. The vast majority of these particles are so small that they drift even lighter than a raindrop and never reveal themselves by burning up like a meteor. They silently enter the atmosphere, slow down without burning, and eventually fall onto Earth's surface, even onto the carpet in your living room. Most of these micrometeorites consist of iron-nickel alloys and silicates. These are the chemical signatures of the era when the solar system was born. The metallic structure seen when a dust speck is viewed under a microscope bears traces of a collision 4.5 billion years ago, a volcanic eruption, or a star's death cry. In fact, there might be a dramatic difference between two dust grains in your home. One is a fiber shed from your hair, while the other is a cosmic traveler that reached Earth from an asteroid wandering between Mars and Jupiter. The scientific importance of these small particles is immense. There are hypotheses suggesting that even some water molecules on Earth may have been transported via these cosmic visitors. In short, the source of life's building blocks on Earth continues to come in part from the sky. Dust's role on the stage of history is not limited to accumulating in the corners of houses. It sits at the center of geological events, determining the planet's fate. Countless times in Earth's history, giant volcanic eruptions have spewed trillions of tons of fine ash and mineral dust into the atmosphere. These eruptions created a global veil blocking sunlight, causing temperatures to drop, rainfall patterns to change, and long-lasting climatic fluctuations. Behind many famines and social movements in early human history, there is the effect of volcanic dust as an invisible player. The share of desertification in massive dust production cannot be ignored either. Especially, the Sahara Desert remains the planet's largest dust generator even today. Every year, millions of tons of Saharan dust are transported through the atmosphere, sometimes crossing oceans to reach distant continents. These dust clouds not only paint the sky orange, they affect ocean chemistry, feed tropical storms, and carry minerals that enable vegetation growth. This delicate relationship between geological processes and atmospheric dynamics shows that life on Earth is surprisingly dependent on dust. Glaciers are silent but unstoppable architects. Massive ice sheets moving back and forth over hundreds of thousands of years ground the rocks beneath them, pulverized surrounding rocks into dust, and created a giant mineral production line on Earth. This fine mineral dust, known as loess, is carried by winds across continents and accumulates in thick, fertile layers that form the basis of productive agricultural regions. Today, many agricultural centers, from China's Yellow River Valley to Europe's alluvial plains, owe their ancestors to these glacial grinders. The unique feature of loess is that it is both light and rich in nutrients. For this reason, throughout history, many civilizations have sprouted in loess-rich regions. In fact, humanity's transition to agriculture was even partially accelerated thanks to this natural dust cycle. This complex geological dance, determined by climate changes, glacial movements, and wind directions, tells the invisible story behind Earth's most productive soils even today. The rise of ancient Egypt is usually explained by the power of pharaohs, the magnificence of pyramids, and the abundance of the Nile. However, the unseen hero of this story is a fine layer of dust, alluvium, silt. The Nile's annually recurring floods deposited mineral-laden dust and muddy sediments dragged from the Ethiopian highlands onto the Egyptian plain. This fine, dark, and extremely fertile layer laid the foundation for one of the world's oldest agricultural systems. Without this alluvium, Egypt's agricultural production could not be sustained. This meant not just food, but stability, power, and social order. Egypt's architecture, mathematics, medicine, and writing all relied on the economic security provided by this dust layer that renewed their lands every year. So, long before the building blocks that raised the tombs of pharaohs, what raised Egyptian civilization was the invisible accumulation in the soil. From this perspective, dust is not just a cosmic legacy or a geological force. It can be considered a silent partner, a kind of invisible engineer standing behind the first great steps of human civilization. When the Silk Road is mentioned, gold, silk, and spices come to mind. Yet, this vast trade network carried much more than goods. An invisible cargo called dust. Every oasis, every desert pass, every caravanserai passed by trade caravans carried fine dust layers drifting with the wind. These dusts sometimes transported the mineral wealth of different regions to other continents, and sometimes carried microorganisms and disease agents along with them. Fine dust coming from the arid steppes of Central Asia created new soil layers when it reached the humid valleys of the Far East, even affecting agricultural diversity. However, the most dramatic effect of this invisible cargo is related to epidemics. A large part of the microbes that carried the Black Death from Asia to Europe traveled by clinging to dust particles via winds and animal caravans. Therefore, the invisible history of the Silk Road contains not only wealth, but also biological flows leading to global transformations. Dust became the silent harbinger of this vast network, the carrier of cultures, ideas, and sometimes disasters. In history books, great collapses are usually explained by wars or political turmoil. However, behind the dramatic social dissolutions experienced in some periods of medieval Europe and Asia, there is an invisible culprit: dust storms. During long periods of drought, the top layer of the soil loosened, and when the wind picked up, massive dust clouds covering vast areas formed. These clouds not only darkened the sky, but blocked sunlight, stopping crop growth, weakening livestock herds, and eventually leading to famines. It is thought that dust storms in the Asian steppes may have triggered migration waves in the Middle Ages. In Europe, it is known that intense dust and ash layers played a role at the beginning of the medieval Little Ice Age. In these times, people saw dust as a sign of bad luck, the wrath of gods, or an ominous omen. Yet in reality, dust was one of the giant shadows of climate cycles and geological processes over human societies. Silent, invisible, but powerful enough to change the course of history. Have you ever wondered where most of those little particles floating in the air come from once a ray of light hits the corner of your home? House dust is a much more cosmic mixture than you think. A mix of micrometeorites coming directly from space and guests breaking off from Earth's vast biosphere. When looking at the structure of house dust, a surprising diversity stands out. Dead skin cells, textile fibers, pet dander, pollen grains, fungal spores, microplastics, and, albeit very small, cosmic dust particles. House dust is actually a small ecosystem. Mites, bacteria, and fungal species live in this ecosystem. Some are harmless, while others are the root cause of allergies and respiratory problems. Moreover, global events like large dust storms or forest fires can change the chemical composition of the dust inside your home within a few days. So, that fine layer sitting on the shelf in your living room is a small planetary archive formed by the combination of pieces coming from both your body and the other end of the Earth. House dust is not just a motionless layer of dirt. It is a living world full of microscopic organisms. A single gram of house dust can contain thousands of dust mites, hundreds of thousands of bacteria, and various fungal spores. Most of these creatures are invisible to the naked eye, but they are constantly fed by our bodies, pets, and environment. Learning that the main food source of mites is human skin is surprising to many. However, since the human body sheds millions of skin cells a day, our homes are actually the natural habitat of these little creatures. The most important aspect of this ecosystem is that it can create invisible effects on the health of the household. Dust mites produce proteins that trigger asthma and allergies in particular. Some fungal spores reproduce in humid areas and affect the respiratory tract. Conversely, the majority of these microscopic communities are harmless. They even contribute to a biological system that maintains the natural balance of the indoor environment. Understanding house dust is actually understanding our way of living with the invisible community around us, a silent lesson in terms of both biology and daily life. The Sahara, the world's largest desert, is also the planet's most productive dust factory. Every year, hundreds of millions of tons of fine dust rise from Africa, travel across the Atlantic Ocean, and feed ecosystems thousands of kilometers away. NASA satellite images show that a large portion of Saharan dust reaches the Amazon rainforests. The phosphorus inside this dust enriches the Amazon soils and contributes to the survival of one of the world's largest forests. This extraordinary cycle shows the critical role dust plays on a planetary scale. While being transported over the Atlantic, the same dust clouds affect the formation of tropical storms, feed phytoplankton populations in the ocean, and even determine Europe's air quality. So, dust is not just a local phenomenon. It is an invisible transmission line connecting Earth's ecosystems. Thanks to this cycle, there is a surprising collaboration between continents, climates, and ecosystems, an invisible but vital connection.
Climate change is not only increasing temperatures, but also changing the amount and type of dust circulating in the atmosphere.
Longer dry periods, more frequent forest fires, and expanding desert areas lead to more dust being transported in the atmosphere. This situation paves the way for reduced air quality, more frequent allergies and respiratory diseases. However, the effect of dust on the climate is also complex. While some dust types can reflect sunlight and cool the planet, others can absorb heat and increase temperatures. Dust seems set to play an important role in future scientific studies. Geoengineering projects have opened the discussion on the controlled release of certain types of particles into the atmosphere to balance the climate. At the same time, researchers aim to better understand the speed and dynamics of climate change by tracking the chemical composition of dust in the air. In short, future atmospheric science shows that dust can be both a threat and a potential source of solutions. These small particles will have a big say in our planet's future. Mars sits at the center of humanity's future colonization dreams. However, one of the biggest obstacles in front of this dream is an unexpected enemy: Mars dust. Much finer, much sharper, and highly reactive compared to Earth dust. Mars dust is a highly electrostatic particle ocean, covering the planet's surface like a fog. Due to the planet's low gravity and thin atmosphere, this dust can rise kilometers high with every wind movement and stay suspended in the air for weeks. This poses a serious danger to all operations on the Martian surface. The chemical structure of the dust is also extremely problematic. Perchlorates found on the Martian surface, toxic chemicals for human health, mix with the dust, carrying the risk of coating astronauts' suits, vehicles, and equipment. Inhalation of these particles can affect many biological processes, from thyroid functions to the immune system. Moreover, the sharp structure of the dust can abrade machine parts, coat solar panels, bringing energy production to a halt, and lead to technological failures in long-term Mars missions. NASA and other space agencies are working on protective materials, electrostatic repellers, and self-cleaning surface technologies against Mars dust. But one fact remains unchanged. The day we reach Mars, the first enemy we face will not be giant storms, but this fine, stubborn dust leaking everywhere. Even in humanity's space adventure, microscopic particles continue to determine the direction of our fate. And so that invisible universe behind a speck of dust whispers a surprising truth to us. The forces shaping the world are not always big, noisy, and massive. Sometimes, what determines our fate is a grain torn from the death of a star. Sometimes a fine layer carried by a desert wind, and sometimes a small guest quietly landing in the corner of our home. Whether it is the remnant of an interstellar journey, the seed of fertile soil feeding civilizations, or a shadow threatening future Mars colonies, dust is the quietest narrator of life, history, and the universe. Although we do not notice it, it is everywhere, an invisible weaver coming with the rain, going with the wind, circulating in our breath, and establishing bonds even between planets. And perhaps the most striking thing is this: some of the universe's greatest stories are hidden in a small cloud we raise while sweeping the world.